So far in these tutorials, we've covered how to create pretty much everything you'll need to have a single object that's even stored in a database. And that's all fine and dandy, but that's not enough. We need to be able to have multiple different types of objects that are related to each other. So what we need to do now is let's go ahead and create a stock model. This is our financial analyst's website. So we need to create a stock because we want to keep track of stocks for our customers. So down at the bottom, we're going to go ahead and open up a terminal in WebStorm and tell Sails to generate a new API called stock. And this new API comes with a new controller and a new model object, a new model file created already automatically for us in the appropriate directories. So we're going to add some attributes to our stocks. So let's say we need a stock symbol. And we want to keep track of the number of shares as well. And we're going to require both of those. We need the symbol to be able to look up what stock it actually is. And we need to require the number of shares because later on we're going to want to look up how much a customer's stock portfolio is worth using the current value of those stocks. And to figure that out, we need to know how many shares they own. The very last thing that we need is a way to relate a stock back to the customer who owns the stock. So we're going to create a new attribute here called owner. And rather than the typical format that we've been using here for type string, type float, we're going to relate instead a model. And we're going to tell Sails to tie this back to a customer model. And we're going to require this as well because we want to force, with the creation of a stock, we want to force that to be tied back to a customer. Now this creates a relationship between stock and customer. But this is a relationship so far that's a one-way relationship. So a stock has an owner. But thus far, the customer model knows nothing about stocks. And one benefit of using a framework like Sails is that we can make that relationship indicated in both directions. And we're going to do that by going over to the customer model and adding a new attribute. And we're going to call this stocks. And stocks is going to be a collection of stock objects via the owner attribute. So the collection line tells us what model to use. In this case, we're using stock. The via line tells us what attribute of stock is going to connect us back to customer. So over here, we have owner. So under our customer model, we tell it to use owner. And we now have a relationship between customers and stocks. And customers can own many stocks, so this is a one-to-many relationship. Now that we have stocks created, the objects, the models created, we want to hop over to our controller and add a way to create new stocks. So we're going to do something very similar to what we did in the customer controller to create a new customer. We're going to create a view called new that we're going to use to add a new customer. But in this case, we're going to do something just a little bit different because we want our stocks to be tied to a customer. And in order to do that, we're going to pull in a customer object that we can use to pre-populate the stock form. And we'll tie this all together in just a minute by going back to the show page for a customer to add new stocks. But for now, we'll just have this here, this new function. And you'll notice what we're going to pass to this new function is a parameter called owner. And we're going to use that parameter to pull a customer from the database and pass that to our new stock view. So in order to do that, let's hop over to our customer show page. And at the bottom of our customer show page, we want to be able to pass that customer ID as an argument to stock new. So stock new here, method post, and we are going to be passing the owner of the stock as the customer, as the ID of the customer on that customer.show page. So that will pull us over to the stock controller, which will then be able to use that owner parameter to pull the customer from the database. So the last thing we need to do is go back over to our views and create a new directory for stock. And then we're going to create a new EJS file called new.ejs. That's our view for our stock object. And then finally, inside of that new EJS file, we're going to put a form that's going to pass, just like with our new customer form, we're going to pass to stock/create. And in this case, we're going to be able to pull some information from the customer object that we passed through the stock controller. In this case, we're going to say at the top that it's a new stock for customer.name. And inside of the form, we can pass along the owner of that stock, which is going to be required, remember, in our stock model. We need that owner. So we're going to pass along customer's ID, and then we're also going to provide inputs for the stock symbol and the number of shares, and then add that stock. So the last thing that we need then over in the stock controller is a create function that looks basically exactly like our customer create function. In this case, for now, we're going to have that create function just generate the JSON for stocks. So we don't have any pretty way to view stocks yet. We'll worry about that in the next tutorial. So for now, we'll just display that JSON so that we know that a stock has been successfully created. So let's save that, rerun our page. And now we'll just refresh just to double check here. And if I go to my page, I now have a button at the bottom that says add stock. And I can add a stock, and I'm going to say I own 50 shares of Google stock. I'm doing all right for myself. And that returns the JSON for the stock, including symbol, number of shares, and that owner object that links it back to me. Now, if we go to the ugly customer view page that's automatically created, my ID is 1, so I can go to /customer/1, and I can see myself, my name, my email, and then this list of stocks that's automatically populated, and that's shown as an array. So I can go back to showing myself, add stocks. I want to own 20 shares of Microsoft as well. Go back to that customer view page, and now I have Google and Microsoft shares listed under stocks for myself. So of course, the last thing we always want to do, we're going to add the stock model as one commit, and then we will add the ability to create new stocks and sync, and that is it. So in the next tutorial, we'll cover how to display those stocks back in a slightly prettier format to the user.